Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. 3 years since Russia began its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, its president says he hopes the war will end this year. Volodymyr Zelensky was addressing European leaders on the anniversary of the start of the war. European leaders alongside Canada's Justin Trudeau were in Kyiv to show support, but there was no representative from the United States. Ukraine says a peace deal with Russia could start with a full exchange of prisoners of war.
We must do everything in our power to enable Ukraine to secure a just and lasting peace, a peace that cannot be achieved without Ukrainians at the table.
The war in Ukraine remains the most central and consequential crisis for Europe's future. Putin is trying harder than ever to win the war on the ground. His goal remains Ukraine's capitulation, and we know what could happen next, because it has already happened before.
Meanwhile, the US and Ukraine are close to agreeing a minerals deal, according to a senior Ukrainian official. The negotiations have been very constructive, with nearly all key details finalized, wrote the Deputy Prime Minister. The US wants access to Ukraine's minerals in return for military aid, but Ukraine wants security guarantees in return. Friedrich Merz, the man set to lead Germany after winning a snap election, says the far-right surge is a warning for the country's other parties. Merz, whose conservative CDU-CSU alliance won 28.6% of the vote, says the US's willingness to engage with Europe is dwindling, but he pledges to maintain good transatlantic relations. The AfD's candidate for Chancellor, Alice Wiegel, who was celebrating a record second-place result of 20.8%, did a victory lap of her supporters, but even her party had hoped for a greater result, and the mood at AfD headquarters was subdued. The Sudanese army says it has broken a near 2-year siege imposed by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces on the key southern state capital of El Obeid. The breakthrough came hours after the RSF signed a political charter in the Kenyan capital Nairobi to establish a breakaway government in areas under their control. The RSF and the army have been in a vicious fight for power since April 2023, which has killed tens of thousands of people and forced millions from their homes. New Zealand's Commerce Minister Andrew Bailey has resigned as a government minister after he placed a hand on a staff member's upper arm last week in what he described as overbearing behaviour. Bailey said on Monday that he was deeply sorry about the incident, which he described as not an argument but an animated discussion. His resignation comes after he was criticised last October for calling a winery worker a loser.
There are times when you have to hold yourself to account. Today is one of those days. I have made the personal choice to resign as a minister and have offered my resignation to the Prime Minister, which he has accepted.
Pope Francis is resting but remains critical with respiratory and kidney problems more than a week after being admitted to hospital, according to the Vatican. Vatican sources said the Pope was in good humour and eating normally, a slightly more upbeat message than they'd been giving over the weekend following his sudden breathing difficulties on Saturday. The Pope was admitted to Rome's Gemelli Hospital on the 14th of February after experiencing breathing difficulties for several days, where he was first treated for bronchitis before being diagnosed with pneumonia in both his lungs. And a life-size portrait of the Soviet Union founder Vladimir Lenin and other paintings from the former state are going up for auction. Described as monumental, they will be up for sale in Gloucestershire in the UK on Tuesday and Wednesday. As well as the life-size portrait of Lenin, there is a scene of Bolsheviks storming the Winter Palace in 1917, and a painting of Soviet troops having a rest after battle during World War II. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.